downstairs that we're beginning, so I think everybody will start coming. So I just wanted to welcome everybody again and thank all the pastors that have, and all the other guests from out of town that have taken the efforts to get back to Yakima and be with us. It's just been a great celebration, and all of us that live here really appreciate you coming from far and wide. It's made it a lot more fun for us. I'd like to introduce we have two charter members, Amy Brown. Amy moved. Where'd she go? Oh, there you are. Okay, there's Amy Brown. Now here we have Rose Lundquist. So she's kind of hiding over here behind that. So that's pretty cool. We have two charter members, and we were wondering if there's any other people that were present that are charter members that are visiting, or even if you were an infant or that you were on the occasion when the church began. Is anybody else here? Edith Norton, right back here? Okay, she's behind Rose. She's there hiding over here. Okay, do you want to stand and tell your name?
Catherine was Morgan. Tommy.
Okay, thank you. Yes. Okay, Elsie Johnson Rich. Anybody else that was? I don't think so. Because I wasn't there either. Okay, well that's great to have you here. Our first little surprise that we had, it is a surprise, it's in the program. We don't have the three tenors with us today, but we have the pastor's five. But I heard rumor that they wanted to be called the Tremors Five. So I'll call up the pastor's five.
You can also call us the three tremors, the earthquake, and the aftershock.
We are going to be singing two numbers that we are planning to sing two numbers. The first one is somewhat patriotic. The first one is somewhat patriotic, except for the third stanza. You'll have to listen carefully to those words of the third stanza. They were just uncovered recently, buried at the Thames River, and translated, and we are the first group that are doing that. We'll probably be the last. So listen to the words. I would also like to thank Virginia, who has been really putting up with this motley crew behind me. That name has been taken by another group, but we fit it better. So here we go, people. My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died,
have any encores prepared? I don't know, I think you're almost good enough to go on tour, but we all want you to keep your day jobs. So you better stay. Okay, next we have a real treat in store for us, and Joyce Bolke and May Carlson have been working many months and very hard to put this style show together. And so let's give them all applause right now. Those people. So they will take over and do the narration. And May, by the way, has gotten the clothing together, and Joyce has been working on the script and trying to tie the history together with the clothing. So.
Can you hear us out there? Okay. Okay. Is my mic on? Okay. Is that okay now? Okay. Well, when our anniversary committee was looking through the pictures of the last 75 years, we noticed a change in dress styles. Boy, were there changes. So we decided to take you on a little journey through the decades, starting with the 1920s. I will tell you a few facts of what's going on in the world, in Washington State, in Yakima, and Central Lutheran Church, and May will bring you the style show of that decade. I found it a real challenge to condense 10 years of history of the world in our state Central Lutheran Church in 2 to 3 minutes. So if I've left out some events that are real important to you, please forgive me. But maybe it will bring back some memories that you have of that time.
Before we begin, I would just like to mention that anytime you can't hear us, if you'll just give a little signal by raising your hand, we'll make sure that we speak louder. We're going to begin with the Bridal Fashion Parade. And once we're through with a few of the decades of brides, we're going to return to the 1920s to feature our vintage clothing. Brides of the 19th century and the earliest 20th century had a choice of colors and usually chose a color that was fashionable that season and could be worn again as a best dress. White became most popular after 1900. The long white traditional gown was born in the 1930s. Our first bride is Laurel Krieger. This ivory dress with a satin trim ribbon and hand-sewn beading was Barb Beeler's mother's wedding dress. She was married in 1925 at St. Paul's Lutheran Church, which is now Bethlehem Lutheran. Christina Peterson is wearing this chemise-style wedding dress made of ivory cotton with a panel of lace inset down the center, on the sleeves, and around the bottom. It was worn by Virginia Brocknow's mother Wilma in the 1920s. Charlotte Montgomery is modeling my mother-in-law Elsie Carlson's September 1928 two-piece wedding dress. It is of mauve rayon crepe with a V-neck insert of lace. Charlotte is also wearing a lovely pillbox hat belonging to Kathy Mullen. Janet Biggie is wearing the wedding dress that Nyla Lyon's mother wore in October of 1938. It's made of burgundy crepe. There is a glass clasp set in gold at the neckline. Satin hearts enhance the front. Nyla Lyon models the wedding gown she wore 30 years ago when she was married in Austin, Minnesota. It is a gown of silk organza and chantilly lace. It's accented with sequins and pearls. It has an attached chapel train. Dixie Bailey. Dixie Bailey is also wearing her very own floor-length wedding gown and veil. It's accented with flowers and buttons all the way down the back. Dixie and Harold were married in 1941 at our former church on 6th and Chestnut.
As we look back over the past 75 years, we remember the 20s as the years of boom to bust and the birth of mass culture. The 1920s were an era of painful contradictions. People are still reeling from World War I and the Great Flu epidemic that struck in 1918 and killed 550,000 people in the United States alone. They were also dazzled and bewildered by the sudden access to such technical wonders as the radio, movies, the automobile, and the airplane. They were torn between the traditional life and the exciting new jazz age. Prohibition takes effect because of the 18th Amendment, and after 81 years of struggle, women were finally given the right to vote in 1920. Warren Harding is elected president, and Babe Ruth became a household name. The first edition of Reader's Digest and Time magazines are published in the early 20s, and the Lincoln Memorial is dedicated. And Laurel and Hardy are giving film audience a belly full of laughs. The Charleston is the newest dance craze, and Scott Fitzgerald's The Great Gatsby is published. In 1927, Charles Lindbergh flies across the Atlantic alone. Then in October 1929, it became known as Black Thursday, when the stock market crashed. And few people really understood the effect it would have so many years in the future. But there were good things happening. In Washington State, they were constructing a new state capitol. They had a dome-topping ceremony in October 1926. The Yakima Capitol Theater opened in 1925 and was recognized as one of the outstanding theaters of the West. In 1927, the Yakima Airport opens, and in 1928, the Junior College opens. And a really big thing happened in Yakima in February 1926, when Central Lutheran was formed through the merger of St. Luke's, Holy Trinity, and the King Avenue. And I think Pastor Baker told you so much better than I, that was really a feat with them having sermons in 3 different languages and so forth. So, this was truly a big event at the time. There are stories that there were some difficult moments, but to their credit, the merger survived. And now me would like to tell you about some of the clothes in the 1920s.
In the 1920s to the 1930s, fabrics tended to be light organdy, soft silk, and soft wool. Trimmings were heavy rows of beading, fringe, rhinestones, embroidery, and applique. By 1925, knees were exposed for the first time. And when the economy boomed, skirts went up, and when the stock market crashed, skirts went down. Edith Mabry is modeling a black wool cape with poodle-trimmed collar and satin lining. Underneath, she's wearing a short-waisted black jacket of lightweight satin. She wears this with a long black ruffled skirt. These were worn by Virginia Prochnow's grandmother, Louise Ratzek, in the late teens or early 1920s. Marie Bacon is wearing a long-sleeved black satin dress. There are gold satin-fringed inlays at the sleeves and the waist. This was also worn by Virginia's grandmother, Louise. Nyla Lyon is wearing Louise's matching lightweight black wool coat. The coat has a flared button back. She also wears a black velvet hat trimmed with a purple rose, which too belonged to Virginia's grandmother.
Well, the 1930s was called stormy weather. The panting, hysterical 20s gave in to the pathetic, hopeless years of the 30s. To this day, there is no agreement as to why the nation, indeed the entire Western world, sank into what is known as the Great Depression, and just what role, if any, the stock market crash had in participating in it. But what people didn't know is the pain and suffering of a time of tragedy and spleen in modern history. And the Great Southern Drought of 1930 was another added catastrophe. In 1932, 25% of the workforce were unemployed, and people were begging for food and for work. Babe Ruth asked $80,000 for a salary, and he said, well, that's more than the president makes. And he said, well, I had a better year than the president. In Hitler's named chancellor by 1935, storm clouds are gathering over Europe, and the United States is hit by a dust storm, which puts even more people into financial disaster. Then again, there are good things happening. The Empire State Building, world's tallest structure, opened May 1st, 1931. And Scotch tape is a new product Minnesota manufactured in mining, and we all still use that. Benny Goodman has taken the country by storm. He is king of swing, and Walt Disney presents his first full-length picture, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Social Security is signed into law in 1935, and the minimum wage is set at 40 cents an hour in 1938. Pearl Buck has won the Nobel Prize for Literature, Good Earth, and Kate Smith introduced Irving Berlin's God Bless America. And in 1939, the New York World's Fair opened, and Donald Stockings first appeared, and Gone with the Wind wins the Academy Award. But on September 30th, 1939, Great Britain and France declared war in Germany following the Nazis' invasion of Poland. Now in the state of Washington, in 1931, Sadus Pass Road opens, and Chinook Pass is completed. In 1934, excavation has just begun on Grand Coulee Dam. 6,000 men and women labored on the dam. And in October 1937, President Roosevelt was busy with the construction of the dam. And after they provided him a bologna sandwich, sounds like a depression, doesn't it? He stated over a loudspeaker that this is the largest structure so far as anybody knows that has been undertaken by man. We do know that the Grand Coulee Dam had a profound effect on the state of Washington. At Central Lutheran Church, the congregation was ready to build a power station in the fall of 1931. And the Reverend Arthur Johnson served as pastor until spring of 39. And then Reverend Bernard Swan came to serve at Central as its pastor.
The 1930s to the 1940s, the Depression era fashion reflected the economy with their practical, washable fabrics and little or no trimming. One-piece dresses to the mid-cap were popular. Zippers were first used in dresses in the early 30s. Erica Rickard is wearing her grandmother, Dixie Bailey's 1932 confirmation dress. Dixie said the skirt has hooks on the side because it was made before zippers were used. Dixie was confirmed at a Lutheran church near Fergus Falls, Minnesota.
It is impossible to talk about the 40s without talking about the war. The war has dominated the lives of Europeans for more than 2 years. But after Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, there was no question America was joining the war. And recruiting stations were soon jammed with eager young men, and people rushed to buy defense bonds. If you are my age, you probably remember as children when the sirens went off for the mock air raid practices where we would darken our homes and go to the basement. And during the war, there was rationing of items including gasoline, shoes, tires, sugar, and many foods. And most everyone helped in the effort to help end the war. Songs such as I'll Be Home for Christmas and Don't Sit Under the Apple Tree with Anyone But Me were popular. The jitterbug was a big dance craze at this time. And the nation's #1 band was Glenn Miller Orchestra, playing songs like In the Mood and Moonlight Serenade. The first medical application of penicillin came in 1941, and many people all over the world celebrated the end of the war in Europe, May 1945. I can remember all the church bells ringing. And the fighting in the Pacific remained vigorous, but came to an end when we dropped the atomic bomb on Japan in August 1945. The end of World War II was followed by years of breathtaking energy and ambition. Thousands of new homes were built. In the late 40s, nearly 750,000 children mailed in 15 cents and a Kix cereal box top to get an atomic bomb ring. And my family was getting very tired of cereal because we wanted box tops for all kinds of special prizes. I remember going into a dark closet to gaze at my new ring that glowed in the dark. And big things were happening in the state of Washington in the 40s also. The generation of hydroelectricity began at Grand Coulee in the third week of March 1941. The Northwest had an industrial revolution with cheap hydroelectric power. In 1942, Hanford Reservation was created. And in August 1945, an industrial framework of and Irene Miner, Lounge Truck has become one of Yakima's best-known restaurants. And during the past 50 years, Miner's drive-in restaurant has undergone many changes, but the Miner Burger is more famous than ever. And as Central Lutheran Church continued to grow, it became apparent that a larger facility was secured. In 1943, a building fund was begun, and in 1947, the decision was made to seek a new church location. And later that same year, the congregation purchased the present site at 16th and West Yakima Avenue for the sum of $24,000. May, do you have some fashions from the 40s?
Yes, in the 1940s, World War II had a drastic effect on fashion. Designs became slimmer in silhouette with much less material. Millions of women wore uniforms. The masculine era of women's fashions were offset by feminine hats and hairstyles. Norma Smoke wore this uniform from 1944 to 47 when she was a student nurse. When she graduated, she received the black stripe on her cap, her pin, and her diploma. All but 2 of her 40 years of nursing were spent at Memorial Hospital. This black wool coat with fur collar and puffs belonged to Edie Johnson's stepmother, Olga Solke, a woman who in 1940 appreciated fine clothing. It is being modeled by my mother, Ada Marquardt. The black satin and sequined festive skirt and top being modeled by Pam Ernst belonged to her aunt, Loretta Davidson. She was instrumental in starting a country western radio show tailored to the armed services. She wore this dress to many of the shows in the 1940s when the recording and radio stars of that time came to town. The red belted dress with trim and bow at the neckline belonging to Olga Klein was worn in the 1940s and is remodeled by Laurel Krieger. The red hat with net was worn by Lynn in the late 40s. Betty Stolte wears this dress of wine crepe fashioned with peplum on the skirt. This dress also belonged to Olga Klein, and she wore this in 1946 when she worked for the State of Washington Employment Office. In those days, Olga said women really dressed up for work. Her hat of fur and feathers belongs to Lynn Ryder and was worn in 1940. This is, my mother is just waiting to take her coat off, I think. Here she comes. These are 2 more treasured 1940 outfits that belong to Olga Solke, Edie Johnson's stepmother. The long-sleeved black rayon 2-piece suit and flounce back is being worn by my mother, Ada Marquardt. Chris Larson is modeling a long black 1-piece belted dress of rayon crepe with a beaded rose applique. And I just saw this sweater last night and I had to include it. Chris is also going to show you a beautiful sweater that belonged to Ruth White and Ray Lee. She wore it in 1936.
Here we are in the 50s, and the post-war economy continued to occur. The 50s picked up where the 20s had left off. In fact, many of the emblems of the 20s, the seductive advertising, the appeal of credit, the lively popular culture, came roaring back in the 50s. If the 20s had the radio, the 50s has television. Advertising has now become an American institution, and the intellectuals worried about the effect TV would have on society. In the 1950s, there was an era filled with such stuff as frisbees, hula hoops, and Mickey Mouse ears. In June 1952, Elizabeth II is crowned Queen of England, and Ben Hogan was the top golfer. In 1954, Swanson's produced the first TV dinner, and little did we know the changes this would create. Walt Disney opened Disneyland California in July 1955, and a favorite song was Dog in the Window. The first McDonald's opened in Chicago, and in October, Ann Landers started her advice column. Poliomyelitis, commonly known as polio, was the most feared ailment at this time. Polio was at its peak with 58,000 cases in the United States. When Jonas Salk announced a new vaccine in 1955 that was safe and effective in preventing polio. In 1956, Elvis Presley had the first album to sell out 1 million copies and gained a record TV audience on the Ed Sullivan Show performing Hound Dog and Love Me Tender. And Rocky Marciano retired as the undefeated heavyweight champion of the world. In 1956, a bill authorizing more than $33.4 billion for an interstate highway is signed into law by President Eisenhower. And TV shows such as I Love Lucy, Dragnet, Ozzie and Harriet are popular. In October 1957, Russia put the first satellite into orbit. It was called Sputnik. How many remember Sputnik? Which meant fellow traveler in Russian, and people were outraged. Were the Russians really that smart? Why didn't American scientists succeed before them? And then the transmitter gave off a faint beat audible on most radios. Were they trying to listen in on our conversations? Then they really shocked us by setting up a doll. And this did spur the United States into improving our science education. In Washington State, Fort Simcoe State Park was made possible when Yakima Indian officials located east of the land. And a Yakima Memorial Hospital was built. St. Bede's had been here before 1920. At Central Lutheran Church in October 1950, the building committee presented a church plan, and they are adopted by the congregation. Groundbreaking ceremonies are held April 8, 1951. The present church is first used on Christmas Eve, 1951. And in March 1958 was the first publishing of the Red Hymnal. Take it away, May.
In the 1950s, clothes began to move back to the more elegant styles. The 1950s image was probably the last period in history of costume when fashion had absolute certainties. Here we have 2 live dolls to begin our 50s fashion. The first one is wearing a yellow dotted trimmed dress with lace on the sleeves and collar. It's being modeled by Allison Biggie and was made by Ruth Johnson in the mid-50s for her daughter, Chris Wested. The red and white checked cotton dress with white collar and cuff sleeves is being modeled by Greta Hammer. Chris Wested wore this dress too in the 1950s. These ladies look so nice. Here we have a 2-piece blue linen jacket dress with a satin foil top being modeled by Dixie Bailey. This dress also belonged to Olga Sulky. Evie Johnson has a picture of her stepmother wearing this dress at a cousin's wedding. Bev Larson is wearing a brown wool coat she wore to college in the late 50s. Underneath, the 2-piece turquoise gray sweater dress belonging to Harriet Dahl was knit on a knitting machine in the early 1950s. Sandy Gibson is modeling the blue velvet party dress that Kathy Moen wore to the senior prom at Yakima High in 1952. Here's little Annie Olden, all decked out in her red corduroy skirt with white fringe and matching vest, complete with boots and hat. It was born by Thelma Lynn Ryder in 1954. It is modeled by Anna Gillis, who is Lynn Ryder's great-granddaughter. Well, the 50s styles were very creative and stunning. The 1956, Kathy Moen bought this velvet-trimmed black tweed Lillian
1960s already. And this decade has been called the decade of challenge and change. It is a decade of dissent, civil rights, anti-Vietnam War movements, the Cuban crisis, Woodstock, and hippies. But despite its problems, the nation endured. It is an unforgettable, exciting era. It is like another period of upheaval, the best of times and the worst of times. In January 1960s, doctors invented the first artificial kidney. And in June 1961, Russia installed 26 miles of wall between East and West Berlin, later referred to as the Iron Curtain. In 1962, John Glenn is the first American to orbit the Earth. And Kmart and Walmart are new to the business world. The Peace Corps has started, and NBC's Johnny Carson show is launched. In November 1963, President Kennedy is assassinated. Do you remember what you were doing when you heard that news? Also in 1963, the United States inaugurated the zip code. At 65, the United States forces are authorized to fight in Vietnam. In July 1969, the United States is the first to land on the moon, and this is indeed a big moment in history. NASA has proved it could do it. This same year, the musical group Peter, Paul, and Mary are well known with Leaving on a Jet Plane, just one of their big numbers. And a children's TV show named Sesame Street is instant success. And exciting things are happening in the state of Washington as well. On New Year's Day 1961, Washington won the Rose Bowl football game against Minnesota 17-7. I remember it well. I've been married 4 days. I was from Minnesota, then he was from Washington. Need I say more? The Seattle Space Needle, standing 600 feet tall, is built for the 1962 World's Fair. And in 1963, Governor Rossellini opened the world's largest floating bridge, the Evergreen Point Floating Bridge. In Yakima, thousands of Yakima Valley youngsters celebrated their birthdays on the Uncle Jimmy Show with Jimmy Nolan. How many did that? At Central Lutheran Church, the new addition unit was dedicated on the new education unit is dedicated on September 18, 1960. And in 1965, I don't know, I think that might be wrong, several Lutheran groups merged to be the Lutheran Church of America. And the Lutheran magazine was first published in 1968.
The 1960s, this was a period of the hippie movement and flower power. It was a decade of the mini dress, mini skirts, low-slung hipster pants, and belts with lots of beads. Ethnic and see-through styles made appearances. Jeans became more acceptable and popular. Jacqueline Kennedy influenced fashion for an elegant, restrained style, fine tailoring, and high-quality workmanship. Well, this is every wife's nightmare about how her husband might dress. Lloyd wore this vest when he sang for the Camerata Club in the 1950s. He may also have worn it when he sang with the barbershop group. The dynamic clad pants were worn by Dwayne Money.
I'll give you $25 more.
That looks great. These are worn at Pam Ernst's daughters, Megan and Ashley. This was also the decade of the shift dress. Megan is wearing the baby blue cotton rayon dress with lime green trim. It belonged to Chris Bested and was sewn by her mother, Ruth Johnson. The green and brown plaid Pendleton wool suit with princess collar belonging to Kirsten Monty is modeled by Ashley. Both outfits were worn in the 1960s. Martha, Blair, and Lindsay Burns, daughter and grandchildren of Bill and Joan Harrison. Martha is wearing Harriet Doll's Jackie Kennedy-style beige dress from the 1960s, complete with the hat of Orville Taylor's late wife, Loretta. Blair, who is 3 years old, is modeling a hat and a matching gray blue tweed coat worn by James Ryder in 1963 when he was 3 years old. And Lindsay, who is 6 years old, is wearing a light blue nylon dress with pink flowers which Alice Dahl wore to Sunday school here at Central Lutheran when she was 6 or 7 years old. And she's also wearing a cap belonging to Kathy Cohen. Even though this couple is wearing a different period of clothing, I wanted them to model together because that's how I always see them. Martha Lowe is modeling a new knit 100% pure virgin wool two-tone green dress with matching coat that Kathy Cohen purchased at Lou Johnson's and wore in the mid-60s. Arnold Lowe is modeling a brown herringbone sport coat which Bob Dahl wore in the late 40s and early 50s. Look how dressed up these three young people are. Erica Biggie models this pink dress, lace dress with short sleeves and cummerbund. It was worn by Thelma Lynn Ryder on her confirmation day in 1960 at Central Lutheran Church. This yellow 100% acetate dress with short puffy sleeves and decorative rolls at the waist was worn by Sarah Ryder when she was 11 as modeled by Hannah Bellis. And 6-year-old Carter Svensson models this navy blazer with gold buttons and pressed applique. It was worn by James Ryder in 1965 when he was 5 years old.
Well, here we are into the 70s. And for the first time since World War II, Americans are having to learn to live with less, as an oil shortage, inflation, and high employment brings the U.S. economy to a grinding halt. By the time the decade hits its midpoint, 7.8 million Americans are out of work. 50 years after the amendment that gave women the right to vote, women are demanding approval of the Equal Rights Amendment. In 1972, the Summer Olympics in Munich, Mark Spitz captures a record 7 gold medals. In January 1973, the United States agrees to stop fighting in Vietnam, and there is an energy crisis in the United States. If there is an image that hangs in the mind from this time, it is the picture of lines of automobiles at filling stations. And we are starting to hear more about environmental pollution, and home computers show up. The preoccupation with self made this, for America at least, the century's most self-centered decade. I've always wondered how they decided such things. But some of the 1970s bestsellers are I'm Okay, You're Okay, Looking Out for Number One, Power, Success, Pulling Your Own Strings, and How to Be Your Own Best Friend. Millions of Americans are dancing their troubles away amid the flashing light and the throbbing sounds of disco. And the movie Jaws is sweeping movie theaters. Popular TV shows at this time are Happy Days, The Waltons, and All in the Family. In 1974, President Nixon resigns and Gerald Ford succeeds him as president. And in 1976, all over America, the United States is celebrating its 200th birthday in glorious ways. And back in the state of Washington, Hal Adams is returned to the Yakima Indian tribal ownership in 1972. And the Capitol Theater burns to the ground on August 11, 1975. And after the fire, the theater is restored. And Tony Heinsberg, a famous artist in the 20s, who first painted the mural on the dome, comes out of retirement at age 83 and paints a new mural for the dome of the Capitol. Now, the 1978 The Green Hymnal, the Lutheran Book of Worship, is first published. And let's look at what fashions we have from the 1970s.
In the 1970s, the maxi length became popular and denim jeans influenced fashion. The country look and casual clothes became a trend. There was also unisex dressing with trousers, jackets, and shirts. Lynn Ryder wore this aqua polyester dress to her daughter Sarah's lace overlay being modeled by Jeannie Dillahunt was worn by Joyce Boke's mother-in-law, Joanne Boke Erickson, in the early 1980s. She carries a silver beaded evening bag, also used by Joanne. Janine Lotzenheiser, my granddaughter, the light of my life, who is 7 years old, is wearing a dress I wore to the mother-daughter banquet here at Central in 1975. Ryan Luton is wearing a sports editor for the Yakima Herald. Well, he wore this to a school reunion retirement party, and someone asked him if he had been swimming upstream lately. Okay, we're going to test the mic again. Can you hear me?
Well, here it is, the 80s, and Ronald Reagan is sworn in as president. In 1982, Barney Clark is the first recipient of a permanent artificial heart. And the dedication of the Vietnam Memorial in 1982 marked a turning point for the men and women who have served in Vietnam. In 1984, Disney World celebrates Donald Duck's 50th birthday, and the Olympics open in Los Angeles like a Hollywood spectacle. The word yuppie became a new word, but I couldn't find it in my 1986 dictionary. Maybe someone can clue me into the official meaning. In 1989 was a time when life didn't simply change, it was transformed, and it going from one evolutionary stage to the next. Not only in the Soviet Union, but also in communist China, where students were marching for reform. And on November 10th, East Germany cracks the Berlin Wall and opened its borders after 28 years. And some major things were happening in the state of Washington in the 1980s. I think the folks in Yakima will not forget the eruption of Mount St. Helens on May 18, 1980. With some 600,000 tons of ash that fell in the Upper Valley, there was a lot of ash to move around. I can remember there was supposed to be a church potluck that Sunday. Isn't that typical? It's one the Bulkies didn't get to. In 1984, a building renovation was conducted, and a new narthex room, chancel, and nave remodeling were dedicated in January 1986. And on January 1st, 1988 was the huge merger of several Lutheran church groups, now to be called the Evangelical Lutheran Church of America.
The 1980s saw a continuation of styles from the previous years. Punk remained a strong influence, but lost much of its impact once it became generally accepted. Dresses had padded and wide shoulders with long sleeves. My daughter, Jody Lotzenheiser, is wearing my dress of green with a black inset bow at the front. I purchased this dress to wear to a school faculty party in 1986. The doll being carried by Jody is wearing the christening gown that was worn by Thelma Lynn Ryder and Jack Lynn Ryder in the mid-40s at their baptisms in Tacoma. Lynn Ryder also made his christening gown. Nyla, do you want to bring out your little doll? We didn't get that. I wanted to be sure and show this. I'll let you in on a little secret before Nyla comes up. Promise not to tell anybody, but Nyla owns almost 100 wedding anniversary in 1989 here at the church. It's being modeled by Nyla. Nyla is wearing her own purple and black hat with matching gloves, shoes, and handbag. And the little doll she's carrying is wearing a handmade white cotton dress with pink embroidered flowers. This dress, together with the pink felt shoes, were worn by Nyla in the fall of 1946. And while Nyla is up here, I would like to extend my appreciation for all you did to help put this program on, Nyla. Our sincere thanks.
Well, here we are in the 90s, and the man ended the century much the same way it started, caught up in a whirlwind over the promises of technology, computers and cell phones, and the cyber cafe, which was a 90s invention combining computer workstations with a decade's drink choice, coffee. But didn't they realize that coffee had been a favorite drink of Lutherans for a long time? It's the time of cell phones and computers. It's when you call your son speaker to let him know it's time to eat, and he emails you back and says, "What's for dinner?" Or you pull up in your own driveway and use your cell phone to see if anyone is at home. Well, the NATO powers announced the Cold War is over, but the 90s brought us Desert Storm, and the American people followed the progress of the war on television. And in spring 1997, a doctor in Scotland creates a baby lamb he named Dolly. And the lamb was in essence a clone, a carbon copy of its mother. And while its creation had exciting possibilities for endangered species, it had more frightening possibilities in building human beings. Would it only be a matter of time before people would be photocopied like office memos? Now in Yakima in January 1990, we dedicated the Sun Dome. It is reported the largest gathering of its kind ever in Yakima Valley. It would create a structure to seat 7,800 people. In the year 1999, we remodeled the fellowship hall, added an elevator, and a patio area. And so I want to take this time right now to thank May, because when the committee asked her to do the fashion show, she just grabbed that ball and ran with it, and I want to thank her so much. Who has brought us decades of music while we've had this show. I really appreciate Barb.
In the 1990s, styles were less rigid and structured than in the 80s. The 90s classic formula became the executive suit of the reformed high-class businesswoman. It was the decade of versatility. A dress and jacket was worn together or separately. The trouser suit for women became the staples of the 1990s. Well, Nyla and I decided not to ask members for fashions from the 90s and 2000 because most of us are still wearing them. So I just asked several people to come out and show you some of the fashions that we're all wearing to church now. And really, in God's eyes, they're all acceptable. We have the Lowe's and we have the Ernst family. And we have the Ryder family. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I feel like we've come full circle. I'm wearing an outfit that I just purchased 2 months ago, and to me it looks like something maybe a couple of our favorite ladies, like Polly Svensson and Adeline Egan, might have worn back in the 1920s. And we are a family of 4 generations, and we all love fashion, and we love celebrations. Thank you for being a part of this commemoration.
and all the years of history. There have been good times and trying times, even at Central Lutheran Church. There have been babies born and baptized, and loved ones who have died. But one thing remained the same through all these decades, and that was God's Word and God's love of us. It has remained constant in a world of change, and we thank all the past and present members and pastors of Central Lutheran Church who have brought us here today. We are so thankful for the love of God and the faith of our fathers. Will you please join us in singing Faith of Our Fathers, printed in your program.
Wow, that was wonderful. I just have a couple announcements. They've announced to me that you may purchase a video of this morning's service and this show, the style show, which is being videoed right now, and for a price of $10, they'll be taking orders in the narthex if you care for that. And also, some people were wondering about the books that have been on sale downstairs. I think they have those in the narthex for a donation of $5 if you can. And so now we invite you to join us for an ice cream social. And if you're milling around, just one more announcement in that the confirmation, all the years of confirmation are on the foyer wall, and volunteers out there, and the baptismal roll is on the wall going down into the fellowship hall. So thanks for everybody for this whole weekend of helping. It's been great. Let's give everybody a round. Gerhard, what? I can't hear. What, a picture? Okay, people would like all the pastors to come up front so they can take pictures.